Well, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us on this week's panel conversation with our law enforcement leadership panel. I'm excited for you to join us because we really look forward to these opportunities to share ideas and perspectives from these leaders in law enforcement from across the country on just how the community plays into the delivery of police services. My name is Matt Fulton, and I'm the Vice President of National Engagement for an engagement company called POCO. We work with communities on helping to build better engagement and tracking and building stronger performance from a resident's perspective. And today we've assembled a panel of law enforcement leaders who are going to be sharing their perspectives on putting police needs and expectations into a community context. We're going to be talking about the challenges that law enforcement leaders from across the country, just the challenges that they're facing in understanding and managing and responding to community needs and perspectives is particularly relevant, just kind of given the turbulent times that we're in right now. These sessions have been very helpful, and the whole intent and purpose of it is for us to gather perspectives, share them, and hopefully you'll come up with a new idea and a new perspective, a creative solution to some of the challenges that you're currently meeting. Here's the way the day is going to go. The session will generally take about an hour. I'll introduce briefly the panel and allow them to kind of introduce themselves a little bit further. And then we'll jump into the questions to the panel. Then probably have a little bit of an exchange following the questions, and then we'll do some wrap-ups. But the whole purpose of this is to gather perspectives from these leaders and then to share them with others who might be confronted with the same types of challenges that a lot of local law enforcement departments are facing these days. So let me do some introductions. Our first panelist is Chief Kathy McAlpine. Chief McAlpine has served as the Chief of Police in Tigard, Oregon since 2007. Before she arrived in Tigard, she spent 30 years with the Tacoma, Washington Police Department, where she rose to the rank of Assistant Chief. What I really found impressive about Kathy's background is her focus on initiatives that build trust between the police and communities of color, as well as her focus on data transparency. I was really impressed by Kathy's commitment to being data-driven in her decision-making and developing strategic plans that recognizes not only the responsibilities that communities have over the long term, but also commitment to building and developing leadership and incorporating technology where it's appropriate. Kathy has been active with the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police Association and is currently on the Oregon Accreditation Alliance Board. She serves on various other boards, including the Washington County Consolidated Communications Association and Board of Commissions. She's also part of a newly formed OACP Homeless Work Group. Chief McAlpine has a master's degree in criminal justice from Columbia College and is a graduate and was class president of Northwestern Police Command College. Chief McAlpine, thanks for being here, and I would really welcome you to just share a couple more words about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's my pleasure to be here and share my experiences both from Tacoma and now in Tigard. And as you mentioned, I've been here now 4 years. So going from a large agency, a population of 200,000 and 400 sworn to Tigard, which is a population of 55,000 and about 87 sworn. So during that time, just a different viewpoint. And I look forward to the dialogue with my colleagues today. And these are trying times, and we all look for creative solutions. So I look forward to sharing our thoughts and our successes and our challenges.
That's great, Kathy. Thanks so much for being here. Let me introduce our second panelist. Chief James McGruger is a 41-year veteran of law enforcement, serving the last 17 as a law enforcement chief executive and the last 10 as the chief of police in Oak Brook Police Department in Illinois. It should be noted that the Oak Brook Police Department is one of the few police agencies in Illinois that has both CALEA and ILEAP accreditations. Chief Kruger is a past president of the Illinois Association of the Chiefs of Police Association, as well as a past president of the DuPage County Chiefs of Police Association. He's been involved with numerous other leadership roles in Illinois, and I should note that while serving as ILACP president, he brought to culmination the historic shared principles document between ILACP and the NAACP Illinois State Conference, bringing law enforcement and communities of colors together. So congratulations on that, Chief. Chief Kruger has received numerous recognitions. He's received an award of distinction in law enforcement twice from the Illinois State Crime Commission. And he's also been named Law Enforcement Official of the Year from the Illinois Securities Professionals. He received a Distinguished Alumni Award from Judson University, where he holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree and graduating with highest distinction. And he also has a Master's of Science from National Louis University in Chicago. I should also just finally mention that Chief Kruger graduated from the Police Staff and Police Command School at Northwestern University. Chief, thank you for being here, and congratulations on your long career serving the public.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you very much for including me on this conversation. I think it's a great opportunity to really kind of further discussion of what we've been trying to do over the last year or so. Really, it's a discussion that we've been having for a long, long time, and unfortunately, due to some national events, we've had to really re-engage and try to re-emphasize the work that we've been doing and continue to do, and hopefully dispel some of the national narrative when we get down to that local level and see just the level of support that we have at that grassroots level and what we've been doing.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate you being here. Let me introduce our final panelist, Deputy Police Chief Paul Doroshov. Started in law enforcement in 1991, and he's worked in the Davis Police Department for 30 years. So congratulations, Paul, on that long career. He's worked in a variety of different roles and has had oversight in a whole wider range of responsibilities in the department. I was particularly noting some of your experience in managing and coordinating major investigations, police operations at large public events, and facilitating safe and peaceful protests and demonstrations. Paul, I suspect that that's probably a talent that has come in handy over the past couple of years. Deputy Chief Doroshov has a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Davis in sociology. Paul, thank you for taking some time out today to share your perspectives, and we'd love to hear just a little bit more from you if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm bringing a perspective from a fairly liberal community. Davis is a college town, about a place where because of the politics, there is a lot of scrutiny on the way we deliver services, and quite a bit of community oversight in what we do. So hopefully, I can bring that to the table.
That's great. Yeah, you probably have had your share of activity over the past couple of years for sure. I tell you what, let me jump into a little bit more of the context, but thanks all of you for taking a little bit of time out to talk today. This whole panel conversation has the title of Putting Police Needs and Expectations into a Community Context. I was a city manager for over 30 years in Minnesota, and public safety is such an important responsibility that impacts every aspect of communities, community quality of life, and just overall satisfaction and people's willingness to invest more in a community. I tell you, I have just such great admiration and appreciation for the work that public safety departments do and for the leadership that you provide to your departments and to your communities. And, expectations are high. It's sometimes it's easy to take for granted the responsibility and the importance of your services until they're absolutely needed. And they're challenged every day with overlapping and nonstop evolving situations just that need to be handled professionally, respectfully, and responded to in an appropriate manner. And as all of you can appreciate, when there's a mistake made in the area of public safety, there are generational impacts that will happen to the community. And so as you add on a global pandemic now and everybody's life is being disrupted, and then complemented by a very polarized political environment and with higher unemployment and business disruptions, all of those kinds of things that really disrupt the normal way of life, it puts your leadership role at such an important point. And so these panel conversations are really helpful just to get your perspective on how does a community play into the conversation. As you start thinking about understanding the needs and public expectations in creating a safe area, we know through our research that the past 2 years, we have experienced a significant shift in public sentiment nationally about local police services. we have a tool that's called the National Police Services Survey. It's one of our benchmark survey tools, and we actually did a national administration of the panel of the survey in 2018 and then in 2020. And the graph that you see here illustrates some of the shifts in resident priorities that have occurred just because of all of the things that have happened over the last couple of years. What's really interesting to note is that the areas where priorities have actually increased relate to those that pertain to connecting police departments more fully with community members. And so that connectedness and the importance of that connectedness are things that residents are looking for. And so the challenge then, of course, is how do you accomplish that, and how do you manage those kind of expectations? So there are three questions that I'd like to pose to each of you today. What role should the community play in guiding or influencing the delivery of local police services? What are the strategies that you use for managing community expectations? And then finally, what tools and methods do you use to understand resident expectations and priorities regarding local police services? And so let's kick into the first question. And what I'd like to do, if you wouldn't mind, Kathy, is start with you. Could you talk about the role that the community should play in guiding or influencing the delivery of police services in Tigard?
Sure, it's a critical one, and one that I would call a mutual partnership, right? But part of it is hearing what the community wants and expects of their police department, but also a sense of they trust me when they hired me to know what the trends are, to know the policing best practices. So I think it's a mutual partnership. And so my training experience, I come in, I try and communicate both with the elected leaders and our community on crime rates, trends, as you mentioned early on. I'm a big data-driven person. So really creating awareness and being out there in different platforms. I present once a month to the council on my executive dashboard. And so they felt very equipped to be able to talk about our needs. And then the community conversely said, we had no idea this was going on. And so creating their level of awareness. So I think it's important that we have this a cohesive partnership, that one doesn't dominate the other. And so far that's been an effective tool. That in May of 2020, we had our first successful public safety levy that allowed us to hire 9 more officers. I think because of that trust and relationship that had built even before I got here. And so we got to see some of the positive, and it's helped us through troubled times as well.
Chief, do you have a pretty active neighborhood-based connection that connected with the department?
No, actually, we don't have really defined areas, defined roles. We do see some neighborhoods that get together like on National Night Out, but not real active. It's a bedroom community that just abuts against the city of Portland. And so it's usually a fairly quiet community normally. And so it's usually us trying to make all the effort to communicate out to our folks. But we held a open house we had over 600 people come and tour the department, but also see all of our tools and tactics and training. And that was quite well received.
Wow, 600 is a huge number.
It is.
Yeah. Do you have any sense for whether or not engagement has increased over the last couple of years, just kind of the virtual way that you're operating?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say I gave it some thought on this question. And I would say right now, especially in a pandemic and maybe with just the social media platforms, the definition of community has changed, and our accountability. It's not just no longer who we serve as our residents. We have some very loud voices, and whether they come out of Portland or even, in another state, they get on these platforms that we are engaging in, and there's no search criteria to say we only want to talk to Tigard residents. So you're getting a lot of input and negativity and some positive, and they may not be your own community members. So for me, it's when I want to make a decision, I want to make sure that I've heard our community and that's what their expectations are. And I think we're challenged in a virtual world to make sure we're hearing the right voices.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chief. Chief Kruger, what role should the community play in guiding or influencing the delivery of police services in Oak Brook?
Well, one of the things that I think that when I first came here 10 years ago, and some of the focus was really on the whole concept of customer service. And I think sometimes that's foreign in the public sector as compared to the private sector when you first talk about that, because there's a kind of a misunderstanding of what that really means. And really, when you take the tack that your residents, your service population are your customers, recognizing that you have to meet those needs, I think opens up a whole different dynamic and allows you to really take a look at it. One of the things that's very interesting in our community that's a little unique is we have a smaller residential population and a much larger commercial business population. That's been a little strange in 2020 because of all the shutdowns, and a lot of things have changed because we have many multi-level office buildings, a very large regional shopping district, and so forth that was very vibrant, and about 80% of our basically our service population and 80% of our call load. So that changed things quite a bit. But prior to COVID, I really had made sure that our focus was on addressing needs of these two different constituencies, because they can be very, very different and have very different expectations. So it was important to wrap those in together, because it's very easy to kind of focus on your resident population and the electors of your particular community, and your elected officials, of course, will listen to those constituencies very strongly. And at the same time, the business population wants to hear from us too. So we've done a lot of work in that regard as well.
Chief Kruger, do you have any, given the size of your business community, do you have any tips for other local governments, other local departments, on just what ways that you're connecting with your business population? I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I'm just wondering if there's any specific things you'd recommend.
Sure. Well, what we've done, and it really was kind of an outgrowth of the national concern with active shooter and some of those other things, is that we've developed much stronger relationships with some of our large players. Many may have heard they've actually just recently lived. The McDonald's world headquarters used to be here in Oak Brook until about 2 years ago when it moved into the city of Chicago. And they had an 80-acre campus and was a very huge constituency of ours. And we would meet every other month with their directors of security, management, their HR, and so forth, and actually met on their campus and had conversations about any concerns that they may have, any special events going on, and so forth. And we have a couple other large, well-known corporations like Ace Hardware, like Chamberlain Group, that are located in Oak Brook, and we do those things. And one of the things that we've done is that we've offered the opportunity for not only site assessments, but actually do the training for some of their employee groups when it comes to either active shooter or response and so forth. Because what we found is, and we've really gotten great buy-in from those corporations, is that it's great if they want to show the canned, run, fight, hide, run, hide, fight videos and so forth, and some of the, pretty good products that are out there. But how is your police department going to respond when they show up on your door? And what are those expectations, and what does that look like? And so we really tailor make that and really develop those relationships. With our large mall, it's a Brookfield property that's a very large national mall ownership, and we meet with those leaders, both the management and the security management, at least on a quarterly basis too, to talk about those same issues, special events, things going on in the community. So we really outreach not only command staff, but I make sure to meet with some of those leadership as well, so that way they see us, and when there is a concern, they've got a name and a face on who to call, and develop those relationships with the business community.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I've during these panels, I hear the term community capital quite a bit, and it just strikes me that some of those things that you're doing in Oak Brook are helping you build that community capital that you can draw upon if you ever need it. Mm-hmm. And more we seem to need it. So thank you.
For sure.
Deputy Chief Doroshov, let me ask you the same question. What role should the community play in guiding or influencing the delivery of police services in Davis?
Well, I think they should play a major role, and they do. I mean, everything we do is kind of based on the community that we serve. Our philosophies are based on the values of the community. So, of course, they play a major role. We have, like I said, a lot of community oversight. We have a police accountability commission. We have a independent auditor that's hired by the city, not by the police department, that oversees us. We have so we have a lot of these different tools, and of course, informally in this type of community, there's a lot of scrutiny just from officers doing their job. The service expectations are high, and obviously, as an organization that functions in that environment, we have to understand that. We have to respond to that. I think the other chiefs pretty much touched on a lot of it, really. But the big challenge is training your officers to really understand that. We're good at technical training, but as far as delivering that customer service is something that I think private enterprise is a lot better than we are, since we're a monopoly. It's harder to put us out of business.
Well,
go ahead.
How do you do a lot of just kind of given the dynamics of Davis and some of the issues that you're dealing with on a kind of a regular basis? Do you do a lot at the neighborhood level? Do you have a pretty organized neighborhood network for helping you understand resident perspectives?
Yeah, I think it depends on the neighborhood. Some neighborhoods are better than others. The problem with Davis too, because it's a college town, there's a lot of transitory residency. So the rental market here is very lucrative. So a lot of houses are bought up to be rentals, and you have students that live there for a year and then move on to another location. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge that we try to meet, but it's very difficult. And the university here is pretty substantial. I think the enrollment now is around 37,000 students. So it's a decent size, and it has a decent effect on the other issue too with our community, because of the education level. Anything that happens nationally and even internationally at times has an effect here. So, for instance, with the Ferguson issues, we had a huge problem that we had to deal with as far as perception with the Minneapolis issue. Now we're dealing with the defund movement here, even though we're very different as far as city size and activity levels.
Yeah, no, I can totally appreciate that. What's really interesting is the research that we've done actually shows that about 48% of your population has actually had interactions with the police department. The balance of folks are really reacting to what they perceive, what they hear, what they get on social media. And so I always kind of contend that you need to be paying attention to what is the experience of folks that have had interactions, and were you treated respectfully? Was your issue dealt with? So I appreciate the dynamics that you have with the college population and just the vibrancy that brings to the community.
Just to touch on that, I've participated in numerous student forums where we've talked about police relations, and that's a good point, because a lot of the students, because they're coming from another area, are also bringing their expectations and their perceptions of police, of where they're coming from, whether it be Los Angeles, San Francisco, or the Bay Area. That may be quite different from ours.
Yeah. That's what makes a college community very vibrant.
Yes, absolutely.
Lots of personalities. Well, thank you. Chief Kruger, let me ask you this question. What strategies are you using for managing community expectations in Oak Brook?
Well, there's a few different things that we employ. One of the things that we put together very early on is a program called HALO, the Homeowners Association Liaison Officer Program. Along with the uniqueness in the way our community is designed, our residential population is made up of about 35 separate HOAs. And just about every residence is part of an HOA of some kind or another. And what we did is we paired an officer with each HOA in the community to be that contact person, and to really be a conduit into the police department, but also help develop relationships. That HALO officer will go to their HOA meetings, have discussions about any potential crime trends. As you can imagine, things that may or may not blow up on social media become more than what they are, and and we're able to dispel some of that misinformation as well, and also give them, the correct data of what's going on in their particular neighborhood. So that way, hopefully the perception reality curve is lessened a little bit as much as possible. Being a CALEA agency too, of course, we do citizen surveys all the time, randomly are sent out so that we can gauge our effectiveness, and also how people perceive how they were treated, were cases followed up on, if necessary, did an investigator contact them, and so forth. We do have a very strong social media presence, and my PIOs are on social media all the time. We use very different the products that you see out there that are national, but there's also a couple products such as Nextdoor we really like, because it can hone in on just our community, and we can put a message out just to our residents if it's something that we want to focus on, and not just get a national perspective. One of the things that we did last summer is understanding that there were some concerns. We've had an issue in our region with an influx, and I think it's happening across the country, with either burglary to autos or stolen autos, because folks seem to have this propensity to leave their key fob in their car now, and can just drive off or enter their vehicle instead of having to pull out a key all the time. And there was such a concern in the community with this, and we keep trying to really put that message out, is that because we couldn't have face-to-face meetings or a typical town hall meeting at our city hall with residents coming in, is we did a virtual town hall on Zoom, opened it up to the community. We had a great turnout, but what was really great too is our IT staff, of course, they recorded it and put it on YouTube, so that way we got probably 3 times as many views from residents after the fact too. And we had some charts and graphs and explained what was going on throughout the community, so that way there was a better understanding of where we were at with it. But what we try to do is we really try to respond to concerns that the community has, or things that we hear about, such as a few years ago, Illinois had forever and ever had waited and finally enacted a CCL statute. And so there was a concern in the community, realizing that there was going to be a desire for folks in our community to start looking at obtaining a CCL, is the whole aspect of firearm safety and storage and those kind of things. So we responded with an evening, hour and a half seminar on locks, keeping things locked up, our state statute on the security of firearms, things of that nature. And so we really try to respond to those community needs when we see them, and work on a program in order to try to address that.
It sounds like you've got a lot of outreach to the community. I hadn't heard other chiefs identify your interactions and your connectedness with your HOAs, but that HALO program is probably a great tip for some of the folks who are going to listen to this segment. Just you may be getting some calls to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we've had great success with that, and it's really a great way to get stuff out there, because what we find is that if we have a flyer for something, or something going on, or some information, is we can give it to our HALO officers. They send it to that HOA president, who then has the distribution list for their neighborhood, and are able to really get the stuff out very quickly.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Sure.
Deputy Chief Doroshov, what strategies are you using in Davis for managing community expectations?
Well, we have the Community Advisory Board, which is various members representing various parts of the communities that the chief meets with on a regular basis every month. Of course, we have organized neighborhood watch groups that we can reach out to anytime and then take feedback from them. Close relationship with our city council members, and they're not shy about telling us what their constituents feel as far as police services. We've done some surveying, and that's been helpful to an extent. It's just a lot of it depends on how the surveys are designed. Neighborhood meetings and meetings with business associations are a regular thing, and that plays into our strategic plan, because we use that as feedback to basically form the strategic plan. Social media, of course, and then we use alert systems like Everbridge and Nixle. A lot of our patrol area is divided up into beats, and we make that known so that people can get more tied in with their local beat officer as far as communication. We make that available through links on email so they can write all the beat officers in their neighborhood as far as what their concerns are. And of course, just teaching officers to, again, something that is unorthodox, more start looking towards customer service and understanding the area they work.
You know, during these kind of times where residents are looking to their local governments for more certainty and confidence, I guess, as they come to the police department and they ask well, they basically explain their expectations that you might not be able to meet, or at least maybe in that time frame. Any tips that you can share on how you manage or give that feedback to those residents?
We've been teaching, it's funny you should ask that, but we've had an issue with that. And we've been trying to teach our officers, a lot of it's with training and how they respond to those expectations. And there's ways of responding to them that are negative, and there's ways of responding that are more positive. And, you know, we've had complaints and issues where it's the officers, well, we don't do that. That's not my problem. And we're trying to turn them away from that into a more positive response, either helping the person transition to another city agency where they get that response that they need, or at least showing empathy for the problem. So that's a huge factor, and one that actually generated, you know, a number of complaints.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Chief McAlpine, what strategies are you using for helping to manage resident and community expectations in Tigard?
Well, first, like I mentioned, we did develop a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, and then effectively communicated that. We established our vision. We're the guardians of the community. So communicating what does a guardian mentality look like, which is, you know, what is being asked of us in this 21st century policing. We take the hard data, all of our crime, also our employee surveys, and then our community surveys. And when I talk about it to our community and to our employees, I say, you should see yourself in this strategic plan. That take nothing away is that you were heard, and that these are our focuses. Then we back it up with a chat with the chief. And so that was going to various coffee shops, and people could drop in and talk to me, ask questions. In the COVID time, we did it virtually on Facebook Live. And the challenge and the fun part of this is I don't come in with any preconceived agenda. It's you ask me questions so you can be on the hot seat, but I get to hear what is the concerns of the community and be able to communicate that. So again, social media is a big platform for us. Same with the mayor's fireside chat. Those were critical after George Floyd and the 8 Can't Wait campaign. And a lot of our community members wanted to know, how do we measure up with that 8 Can't Wait? And so partnering with the mayor and then also with the chat with the chief was able to communicate how we're different, or that we meet those standards. And then the other thing that I've heard a lot of positive feedback is we created a transparency page. And on that is an opportunity for me to put any messages to the community. For example, just 2 weeks ago, it was acknowledging to our communities of color, in particular our Black community, that during this trial that they may be re-traumatized, they may be hearing things, and just simply acknowledging that we understand if you're, going to be under a certain amount of stress. We also have our dashboard, our traffic stop data, our policies. So it's a one-stop shop where you can get anything, especially when it's regarding racial and social justice, can be on that transparency page. We also have a newly created public safety advisory board. And we meet every other Monday to talk about how we police in Tigard, our policies. This is a very diverse panel. And just the other day, they gave their seal of approval to expand our body-worn camera to department-wide, where we only had 7 before then. So that was a great opportunity to see them support this technology that we all know is not cheap. And then thinking outside the box with the mental health issues and homelessness, we took a non-sworn community service officer and let them be the lead on our homeless outreach. So kind of meeting the community's expectation on not having a sworn armed officer, and that community service officer is out in the community touching base in these encampments, letting them know what the services are, and then enforcing any code when we need to if they're in sensitive wetlands. And so, and then the other thing again is it's always evolving what the needs are. And under mental health, for the first time, we're looking at having a clinician in the south cities of Washington County, where we'll pair up our officers with a mental health clinician and have them out on the streets. And so we hope to, be part of that county-wide, but actually having it focus in the smaller cities that don't normally get that type of resource, and creating it down here. So a lot is going on, but a lot of it is just effective and constant communication, but also active listening. Sometimes the best I can do for our community is just listen.
Yeah, and congratulations and kudos to your work on the strategic plan. I think the ability for that plan to be able to demonstrate to the public the progress that you're making in some understandable and objective way certainly helps to build confidence in the work that you're doing. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And as Chief Kruger said, it's part of your not so much marketing, but giving the community a sense of confidence that we're a professional organization. Tacoma was CALIA accredited. We're here in Oregon Accreditation Alliance, but to tell our community that we adhere to best practices, and so they get that level of confidence that they basically allow us to police in a professional manner. Really gives us the freedom to do the right things, when nobody's watching.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Deputy Chief Doroshov, let me switch on to the final question and ask you, what tools and methods are you using to understand resident expectations in Davis?
Again, I kind of went over some of those. All those groups I've described, we use those to get feedback. Whether it's CAB, neighborhood watch groups, city council, neighborhood meetings. Again, we've used surveys in the past. It really depends on how well the survey is designed. Sometimes what we found lately is people get kind of survey fatigue. So you don't get as high of a response. But, and then, of course, never forget to ask the officers, because they have a lot of exposure when they're doing their work and patrol. On what feedback they're getting. So, and of course, we have analysts that run our numbers to see how those fare with the qualitative information that we take in. And we try to draw a picture off of that, essentially. But, the Davis public is pretty good about expressing their opinion. The only downside to that is you have to see where the loudest opinions are coming from the majority group or a small number of people. So who are you really, changing for if you're creating change? But so far it's been pretty effective, and I think we've got a pretty good grasp on what our community is. So I guess that's a benefit too.
Paul, if you were to recommend to another local government, another local police department about the thing that seems to work the best for you for getting resident input, what would you say?
I am a people person, so I would really recommend more of trying to get meetings and trying to get that qualitative feedback from residents. And unless you live in a controversial high crime area, you really have to market those to get the attendance. So you got to put forward, you can't just announce it on Facebook and hope that you're going to have a significant number show up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Chief McAlpine, what tools and methods are you using in Tigard to get resident expectations and priorities?
Similar to what I said before on the outreach, but a couple other things I would add is, again, pre-COVID, and when we come out of this, is when we have festivals or street fairs, the Latino Fest, we had a booth there, and just having people stop by and I can show them, our response times, what the crime rate is, answer their questions. And so again, coming out into the community where they're at, so it's not always asking them to come to us. The other things, and especially in the last months is being intentional in our outreach to our communities of color. And again, a population of 55,000, we don't have standard affinity groups that I had in Tacoma where I could just go to the Black Collective or the Asian Women's Association. So we have to do more intentional outreach. So we've done a chat with the chief in Spanish. We've also partnered with Unite Oregon to really bring our community of color, and they were the bridge and say, what are your needs, especially in a pandemic? And a lot of it was maintaining their housing, or how do I keep my house, and all of those concerns. But we did hear about it. We heard about immigration, or especially in the previous administration. And so really trying to say how we can be more intentional. As the chief said, you know, they're not the loudest voices. And so we have to respect and appreciate their voice. And so we just have to do a more intentional effort in trying to get those voices. And whether that's making sure we have interpreters, making sure that more things are in Spanish or other languages, and really thinking outside the box. And that's what we've tried to do.
That's great. That's outstanding. I love the way that you use the term intentional, because I think that is so true. And paying attention to the translation needs of your community is also another way that you're really helping to build community. So thank you. Chief Kruger, let me ask you that question. I know you were talking a lot earlier about some of the tools that you're using, but can you just expand on them again about how you are getting resident perspectives and expectations on local police services in Oak Brook?
Sure. One of the things that we do and that we're always excited about, and quite frankly, this past year, I think we're all in a little withdrawal of not being able to get out a little bit more, is we've had a very successful Citizen Police Academy program. For several years, we ran 2 sessions a year, both in the fall and the spring. And it's, it's tough in order to have folks be able to dedicate, a couple hours, one night a week for 9 weeks. We've tried to experiment a little bit with that to make sure that it was convenient for people, and then unfortunately had to suspend those things this past year. But one of the things we also did is that we included our business community. So you either were a resident of Oak Brook or you worked for a corporation that was a resident of Oak Brook. And so we were able to tie those 2 populations together too, which is a lot of fun to see some of that dialogue and communication back and forth between those different constituencies. And then from there, what we've been able to do is really hone that alumni group that have gone through that. And we find that they are some of our most tremendous cheerleaders in the community, because they develop relationships with us. And that's one of the things that I talk about in my welcoming speech and my graduation speech at the end is talking about that ongoing relationship, and that we still want you to come by and we want you to participate. And as Chief McAlpine said, we have booths at some of our big events, and oftentimes we have those alumni folks help staff them with our crime prevention people, and really they become part of it. We get them T-shirts that have our logo on them and say CPA alumni and so forth, so they become part of the department. And we're also very active in Illinois is a very active state with the torch run, the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics. So we have tip a cop events at some of our restaurants and some of those other events, and a big golf outing, and all those alumni folks join in that and share in that, and help become the volunteers and help staff things. And really it's a great conduit for us, because we can get feedback from our residents on what's going on out in the community and what some of their concerns are. And we find that they're wonderful to get to their neighbors and say, well, no, that's not true. It's really this, or this is what that officer was doing, and it wasn't that. And because one of the things too, I always say every time is that the perception of what we do and our jobs, you can't get from watching TV, and some of the shows that folks have kind of they think they understand what this job is all about. So our job is to really try to educate folks on just what being a police officer in their community is all about. And so that way that understanding and that perception reality curve again really gets diminished.
Yeah, no, congratulations. How many classes, how many Citizen Academies graduating classes have you had, you know?
So we relaunched right as I got here 10 years ago. So we've probably have about probably 15, 16 now.
That is a good alumni.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just outstanding. That's absolutely, I totally believe in what you're doing in building off of that alumni, because that they do become your supporters and kind of your quasi members of the department for sure at the community level. Well, thank you to all of you. I always like to give a couple of minutes at this point of the panel conversation just to see if there's any questions between any of you. Anybody have anything on your mind? Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, one, I just want to add, because I think it has value to anybody who might be listening to this conversation. The other unique thing, again, when you talk about a national narrative, the national narrative was to get police out of schools, right? To eliminate the school resource officer program. And being right next door to Portland, the Portland School District completely eliminated that program. Well, that has been a very robust program. In fact, the levy added one more additional school resource officer. So what we did is we partnered with the school district. We did a lot of community outreach, parents, our students of color, and really talked about the issues, how we do the school resource officer program that might be different than a national level, and use data, of course, on the perception of how many arrests or we don't participate in discipline. And what's coming out of that is next week we'll be in front of the school board, and they more than likely, because they've always had one read, is that they will keep the school resource officer program, but reimagine what that might look like. And again, do more intentional outreach with affinity groups like the Black Student Union, and some of those others, connecting with the students. So again, to share with people, even though the national narrative may say eliminate a program, but trying to really evaluate your own program for its own merits is so powerful. And I can't wait to see what this new program will look like. But it's been pretty exciting in the community that they want to.
Yeah, thank you. Jim, Paul, anything?
No.
Just if I could add on to that a little bit, I think Chief McAlpine hit it right on. I'm involved on a statewide basis with our legislative efforts with the Chiefs Association yet as a past president, and some of those concerns. And it was funny not funny, but very obvious when you put that first slide up of the community perception changes from 2018 to 2020. Well, 3 years ago, it was all about school shootings and getting armed police officers or security in every school and stopping those things. Now all of a sudden it's pull them all out, and the path to prison argument and that whole issue, and really kind of just trying to dispel those misconceptions about why we're in there, and that we've always considered them the number one and the primary citizen-oriented policing program you could have is where the officer is in the community of the school, where the kids can meet that officer on a one-on-one basis, on a named basis, not just somebody driving around in a black and white and never get to know them. And what a great opportunity, because those officers have uncovered, issues going on at home. It could be some kind of abuse issue that the child would have never come to the police station about, but will go down the hall to the office for the SRO to have the conversation with. So trying to really talk about those things on what's really important locally versus the national narrative is so important.
Yeah, thanks to both of you for bringing that up, because the chart I showed earlier, in 2018 and in 2020, school safety and security remains the highest priority across all subgroups. And so those kind of discussions, if this data were available to some of those community leaders, the conversations might have changed the way that the outcome ends up to be. So thank you for those perspectives. I'm going to share my screen again, but let me just kind of wrap this up by just thanking you. All of you are doing just outstanding work. I love the discussions around the accreditation process, because that helps to demonstrate and build that community trust on that you're following best practices and doing things that the best departments are doing around the country. And the notion of being intentional and transparent, taking advantage of technology, and then engaging in all of your groups, whether they be residential or organized in some manner in your community. All of you just really came across loud and clear about how you are doing that outreach work on connecting with your residents, so you understand what they need and what the priorities are, so that you can do your jobs and actually implementing them in a way that's responsible and professional and consistent with your policies and procedures and those kinds of things. But then also having the ability to manage those expectations. Paul, your point about training the police officers to kind of respond to community expectations. I just think that that's probably a really important talent to have and skill set to have, just in terms of trying to meet everybody's expectations, but also acknowledge that not all of them can be met today, and they need to be put into a structure. So great conversations, great input from all of you. So thank you for the time that you have spent here with me today. I'm going to follow up with each of you, and I'll make sure that you got all of the contact information for each other, so that you can connect with each other if there's anything you want to follow up on. We do these sessions every Tuesday, so if there's anybody that you think would be interested and helpful in these conversations, I would welcome you to get them in contact with me. Love to get your feedback from you, and always trying to figure out ways that we can make these panel conversations a little bit more helpful and useful for folks who are going to be learning from your perspectives and ideas. You should start seeing these recorded sessions probably within the next week, and certainly welcome you and encourage you to send it out through your LinkedIn connections. Again, we just want to share these ideas and perspectives with others, particularly those folks who trust your opinions, and really just appreciate the thoughts and perspectives that you shared. So with that, let me just thank you and appreciate your time. And one of the things I love about these conversations is I get to meet new people every week. So it's super. And especially with leaders like you that are doing great stuff. So thank you. And if I ever get to your community, I'll look you up.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Matt.
Do that.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
to meet
Mike.
everyone.